All right, it is not racist to state a fact, and this is where Australia really does show that they are truly about 50 years behind the US, because America is starting to actually move forward from the word and the terminology racism, where now it's been overused so much that it's just become a blasé word. Are you racist? Well, no, I'm not. What I said was a fact. For an example, if you are a junky, low-life, dirty Aboriginal, there's nothing racist in that terminology. You're an Aboriginal, you're a junkie, you're a low-life, and you're a dirty piece of shit. And that actually refers to a guy that I brought my dog from back in April 2015, a guy called Brett Aikenhead, who thought he could actually use organisations such as the Dirtbag Aboriginal Organisation that seems to harvest criminals, and they don't seem to get, well, they don't go to jail, basically, or charged. So it's this whole ridiculous behaviour in Australia, which is something that the US will never have, because they actually have a legal system in America, where if these Indigenous types people, they break the law, it goes to some elder or something. Look, I've actually touched on this subject many years ago, back when I was violently attacked on my way home from work. I wasn't the only person. I'm going to make sure that this is very clear. As per the detective looking after the matter, which is Detective Chopra at Surrey Hills Police Station back in November 30th, 2007. As he even said, you know, you weren't the only person that was mugged. It was a string of muggings. So they gathered evidence from other people, and they knew exactly who the person was that mugged me, because of the other people, the other eyewitnesses. And it was a group of ICE addict Aboriginals. Now, the problem with Aboriginal community in Australia is they're drug users, they're alcoholics, they thieve. They're lying, thieving druggos. Predominantly, most of the Indigenous community is that. And we can go back to the 80s in Australia, where we were talking about the problem with these people. It wasn't fixed in the 80s, and it's gotten an infestation of extremely worse with these types of people. And that's a fact. It was Len Hancock, which is Jenna Reinhardt's father, who he was a friend of the Premier at the time. I remember this because my grandfather, Reg Purdy, agreed with him. And they were talking about the problematic ones, the ones that will not domesticate. So the undomesticated, the ones that aren't civilized barbarians. What are we going to do? Because they're just thieving, junkie, lying, you know, animals, basically. And he had a great alternative, and that was to, taint their water supply, so they become sterile and we can breathe them out. And that's something that was actually even talked about and widely talked about in Australia. And I think that it comes to a point in Australia where we're looking at the situation of an infestation of a type of race that does have to be bred out. So we can almost go back to 1984 with that. Was it 1984? I was about 6. I remember it very clearly because my grandparents were very much for this as well. There was an absolute infestation of these types of people, and we still have this to date. I was violently attacked and mugged, robbed on my way home from work, leaving me dead to die on Cleveland Street in a Glasgow Carmichael 13. If I wasn't found by passerbys, they didn't know what happened to me. They had no idea that I was coming from work and I was robbed. All they saw was a bloody mess laying in the middle of Cleveland Street. Left to die in a Glasgow Carmichael 13. That's what these barbarians did. They're barbaric, undomesticated, uncivilized race that really have not been, that we were leaving them to their own people when that should not be the case. It should be, normal civilization that has been civilized for thousands of years, where these people haven't been civilized. We only started trying to civilize them since the 1960s. And what we're doing is wrong. We're leaving it to their own, people. It's like, no, sorry. You have to assimilate. Anyway, so I was extremely, I was badly hurt. You can see the damage to my left eye, just here, that scar there. So my left eye is damaged. I do wear glasses, but the left eye is damaged. I would never get the proper sight back in my left eye ever again. So I would never have full sight ever again. and this was to rob me. Now, Detective Chopra at Surrey Hills Police Station gathered enough evidence from the other people that they pointed the people to Moorhead Housing Commission. So it was Moorhead Road Housing Commission in Redfern, where a group of Aboriginals, and they actually found my work ID in the bins there and other people's belongings. They didn't get my jewelry back. So they knew exactly who they were. I did a swab at Surrey Hills Police Station so they could remove so they gave us some items. They said, well, remove your DNA, so we can try and pinpoint something to these people. He said, but Justin, I'll tell you right now, because they are Aboriginal, it will be taken from us and given to an elder and they'll get a slap on the wrist. You could have been dead. Like if you hadn't have woken up from the coma, I was in a coma. And he said, if you didn't wake up, they would have just gone away with murder. These Aboriginals would have gotten away with murder because the Australian government does nothing to actually stop these Aboriginals and arrest them. And this has gone on, and we've talked about this in the 80s. We've talked about this for over 40 years. And the word, oh, but that's racist. It is not racist. Okay, go and look at the word racism. And this is where America's said, right, we've had enough. Right, the word racism, it's blasé now. Means nothing, holds no weight. And Australia's still about 50 years behind the US, where we've got to turn around and go, sure, say racism. Haha, funny. Like, they laugh it off. It's not racist, sweetheart. And say, if you say that's a dirty Aboriginal, it's a junky Aboriginal, that's what it is. I'll say it to a white person. I've seen some disgusting white Australians that are really low-life, deadbeat rednecks. And that's not racist at all to say that. I'm stating a fact. Racism is if I'm saying something that's not untrue. No, what I'm saying is exactly true. So with these types of people, I'm going to go back to April 2015. I purchased a beautiful dog that was getting ill-treated from a junkie Aboriginal. So I brought an English Bull Terrier from a dirty, low-life, ice addict Aboriginal. He was selling the dog. I paid $2,000 for him. But the Aboriginal who I bought him from, Brett Aikenhead, actually had insurance on the dog. And I paid for vet bills for the dog. And I gave him the receipts. And he claimed those receipts and got more money. So he actually got more money. I did it to help him. I thought he was going to use, he was going to use it on more drugs. But basically, paid for the dog's operation. So I don't know, he probably would have got it in total, how much money he made from insurance and everything as well. But he got $2,000 from me, transferred into his bank account, plus whatever money he made for insurance for the dog. So he got a really good, helping hand. And, he was a dirty junkie, and that's true. And it wasn't until he sold his house that he ever had any money. So basically, and of course the Aboriginals in Australia are so entitled, they get given everything. So the leg up that these people get, and what do? They shoot it up their arm, blast it up their arm, or drink it down at the pub. That's exactly what these people do. And that's what they always do. Because we've left them to be the entitled race in Australia when they're not. They're not. And people want to talk about them being the older civilization. They're actually not. This is a fable that's been spread around to try and promote them. They're not the older civilization. They weren't the original civilization of Australia. There was another tribe that was here first that has been wiped out. Okay? There is evolution. There's talk, some of the bullshit that's gone on since we've elected this absolute frigging criminal Anthony Albanese, which, honest to God, the people that voted for this man would have to be criminals. Why would you vote for Anthony Albanese? He is not, we've just seen what he's done to Australia. Okay. The worst person anyone could have ever elected for Australia is the Labor Party. We all saw what Kevin Rudd did in 2007. We all saw what happened under Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard's leadership. And we'll have to be absolutely blinded to believe that this was going to be any different. It's not. So I'm going to leave it there. and say that the last 10 years of what I've just been put through by groups and organisations, including a race of people, is criminal. But in Australia, we've left them to be entitled. Okay? Very different story when you go to the US that has had an absolute gutful. Police in America have an absolute gutful, which is why Blue Lives Matter. And I was one of the big supporters of Blue Lives Matter in the US. Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organisation and promotes criminal activity in terrorist organisations. Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter is the only organisation that anybody should be accepting. Honest to God, I lived in the US during that whole Black Lives Matter movement and those riots, and there was nothing but a terrorist takeover of organisations. And that's exactly what it was. And America woke up because all the last 4 years did was release criminals into society. And the US woke up and thought, shit, we've got to pull this in and bring back civilization and a democratic country. Something that Australia actually needs to do.